Yes, please. Any queries from the last class discussions? Hope I am audible to you. Can anybody please respond?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You're audible.
So last class we started to understand about blockchain and how we can try to implement it for the IoT applications. So we had a brief introduction about this blockchain, and of course I will give some more details in today's discussion. Before I move on to this topic, then if you have any queries from the last class discussions, please let me know. Yeah, no queries from the introduction to blockchain for the IoT or any other topics before? Okay, then we will move on. So for today's discussion, I would like to just emphasize on some more details on this blockchain, so that these intricacies, that means the internal details of this blockchain, how we try to implement on the IoT. So let us try to understand this. So basically, of course, this notes is available on the Google course page. You can download it. So hope my screen is visible to you, right? So basically, your blockchain is a shared database. So here, what we are trying to do is we are trying to share some information across various peers or across various nodes. In other terms, across various electronic gadgets or electronic devices. So basically, when you share this piece of information across various nodes or your computers, so this becomes basically a distributed environment, in the sense that your information is distributed. Your information is shared among various devices which are connected with each other. So that distributed information which is being shared among the peers, you might have known the meaning of peer technology. So basically we have something called client server technology, and you have something called peer-to-peer technology or peer-to-peer environment. So here in the distributed environment is basically one of the example of a peer-to-peer technology. Whereas in client server environment, you have two entities, you are trying to exchange the information based on some understanding. Whereas in distributed environment, where you don't have some centralized approach and you are trying to access the information from the various nodes which are connected with each others, because basically all those are of peers which are having the equal capabilities and equal features which are trying to exchange the informations. So this blockchain technology, or you can call it as a blockchain philosophy, wherein we try to implement on a distributed environment or in a distributed data sharing among the various peers or among the various electronic gadgets. But that information which is getting shared among those peers, that information is basically is going to be very confidential, in the sense that it's going to be very secured, and whatever the transactions or whatever the activities that are been happening on that documents or on that information that is getting shared is going to be updated with the respective timestamps. So those timestamps will always keep track of when the information is getting updated or added or deleted or whatever it may be. So basically this information is going to be more secured way. So please remember, is blockchain is one type of philosophy, a technology, where it is meant for you to have some kind of secured data transactions or secure data transfers across various entities or across various devices of your system. So this blockchain, so the name itself tells block and the chain. The block is nothing but contains some information. The information which is present in terms of blocks, and that information is being connected with other peers information. So basically it is a chain process. So this technique is basically, we try to make use for various purposes, not only just for some kind of money transactions, or you call it as a bank, alternate banking transactions, but we use this technique, this technology for various purposes. So in applications like in healthcare also we use this technology, in applications like transportation, even in agriculture, any kind of application. So this technology can be made use of for you to securely transfer the data or securely exchange the data among the various entities, so that there is no intermediary person or some other person who is going to tamper or going to alter the data during the data exchange. So if at all a person tries to tamper, or you are going to change the transaction information or your information that is getting exchanged among various peers, then immediately it's going to be known to all others too, that there is some kind of misbehavior is happening across the chain, so that everybody is aware of what is that particular information that is getting changed. So basically this blockchain is used to securely transfer items like money, property, contracts, document exchanges. So without requiring a third party intermediary, some other entity which is not in between two different entities which are trying to exchange the information. So that is what this very important information, blockchain technologies is. Blockchain is something like most of you are using the email. If you might have seen the email exchanges, so you don't know what is the background of that email exchange. Some of you might have already learned about SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So it is something like whenever you try to exchange the emails between two entities or between two persons or between different systems. So the basic philosophy on exchanging the information takes place with the protocol mechanism that is very much similar to SMTP. So simple thing, that is a blockchain is also something like which is in the background, which tries to have a secured information exchange between two entities. When I say entities, it can be devices, it can be of course a person using a device tries to change some data and retrieve some data. So, and this is also called as meta technology, because this meta technology, blockchain is one of the meta technologies aspects, where meta is basically you are going to have many in terms of something like a database, software applications, networks, and that is basically connected computers and other stuff which are related to your information technology. So the blockchain itself is one philosophy. And mostly you might have heard this term Bitcoin blockchain or Ethereum blockchain, or sometimes called digital tokens. So more or less all these are working with the same philosophy in the background, but there are subtle differences between their usages. So Bitcoin blockchain, so basically the Bitcoin, in the background we use the blockchain philosophy. Similarly, Ethereum, again, it also uses the blockchain philosophy, but their implementation is different from this a little bit on the Bitcoins. And as well as digital tokens also follows the blockchain technology, but there again the implementation in terms of digital data transfers. So for all, basically these are all meant for security and of course to some extent on the privacy. So most of these are all about talking the distributed ledgers. So in the last class, we used this term called as ledgers. Basically, ledgers are nothing but, in basic terms, they are nothing but documents. So you are the documents which are carrying some information across the chain of different devices. So please remember, Bitcoin is not exactly equal to blockchain. Please remember, So this is Bitcoin is at the wrapping of some other blockchain process. Wrapping of means in the background blockchain philosophy is going to exist, but the basic activities of the Bitcoins are going to be different. So let us see some basic architecture of the Bitcoin. Or in other terms, the blockchain philosophy for something like on the Bitcoin. So here you see what is a block. So a block is basically, you can see it is basically a document or a ledger. So it has got its various components, and this ledger or the document information basically has got the secured information, so that that information cannot be changed easily. So that block is getting connected with another block. Similarly, that block is like this. It is going to have a series or a chain of blocks, each maintaining certain information, and that information is in a secured manner. So here a block chain is a chain of blocks that which contain information. The data inside is a block is that basically we have a secured information, and the first block in the technically the term is called as Genesis block. So here the initial block which initiates some data exchanges or transactions among various entities or among various peers. Basically that first block is called as a Genesis block, and each new block in the chain is linked to the previous block. So please remember each blocks are connected with each other. So there is a chain of blocks. Now coming to what is exactly happening in the block itself is, so the data which is present in the block is going to be hashed. So the purpose of the hash is basically to hide the information and to secure the information, so that other persons cannot retrieve it, other persons cannot change it, and other persons does not know what is exactly present inside the block. So something like you have a hash SHA-256 algorithms that can be easily applied on this particular block of information or the document information, and the block is secured in a better way. So once a block is created, any change inside the block will cause the hash to change. So if at all you try to tamper, you try to change it, definitely that is going to be known to others. Each block has got certain things important, primarily with the data that you are going to store or the data that you are going to keep it secured, and the hash technique that you are going to apply it on the data, and as well as the hash of the previous block if it is connected with a chain. So here, if at all, you can see here the block 1, block 2, block 3 in very simple terms. So you have certain hash function of each block, and of course you also have the previous hash function, previous block's hash function, so that whenever there is a change on the previous block, it is also going to be known on the other blocks, and everybody knows it. So the entire chain containing the blocks of information gets known each other. If at all a hacker comes and tries to change the hash function of one particular block also, it is going to be known to other blocks too. So basically this is the one important aspect that is already, it is in most of the activities, most of the applications, this blockchain is now in place. So basically whenever somebody is trying to change the data or tamper the data, so basically there is a technical term called as proof of work. So here hashes are an excellent mechanism to prevent tampering, but computers these days are very high speed and calculate hundreds of thousands of hashes per second. So it is possible that even the intruder can know what is the hash function and try to tamper the hash function itself and get the information from this. But once it is been known that there is a change here on the hash function itself, that's why the other block, only thing is the hacker or this particular person who is going to change here has to change the hash function of every block. And if suppose the blocks are the chain is very large enough, then definitely it will be very difficult for the intruder or the hacker to change the entire set of blocks, and that is very time consuming. So it is not as easy as one person can trying to change some information on a particular system or in a particular server. So that's why it is a peer-to-peer and a distributed environment. It is going to be a very long chain, so that all the information has to be changed. It takes a lot of time and a lot of pain for the hacker to do and achieve on those things. So here, same thing, please remember, each block when they are being getting chained with each other, there needs to be a synchronization, and that synchronization will always keep track of the changes in the respective blocks. If all the owners of the blocks are changing certain information of their own, so that that synchronization and as well as the data information gets exchanged with those synchronized values. So that's what I'm telling you. It is a distributed peer-to-peer network, and that is the advantage of having this blocks exchanges between the peers of this particular network. So anybody who would like to join this, they have to adhere to the distributed peer-to-peer network modeling. So only thing is, whenever somebody is going to change or to being added, suppose a new person, a fourth person is getting added into this existing blockchain of 3 blocks. So definitely in this distributed P2P network, when the fourth person or the fourth block is added to the chain, definitely there is going to be a consensus algorithm or a consensus method. Please remember, this is a technical term again for the blockchain technology. So this is a consensus algorithm which you are going to run across this blockchain so that everybody has got a common understanding or a common set of philosophy that is going to be understood by each and every person. So here we are trying to understand what this particular consensus algorithm is. And let us understand this terminology before we try to go into the implementation of IoT. So that's why I'm just trying to give you some of those terms. So to successfully tamper with a blockchain, you need to tamper with all blocks on the chain, and you have to redo the proof of work of each block, and at least 50% of the blocks has to be in control, as well as you need to change yourself in that particular peer-to-peer network, and it is a little bit very next to impossible. That's the thing, the advantage of having the blockchain philosophy. You can see that every transaction that you perform on the blockchain, so a transaction is requested or it is initiated, and the transaction is going to be broadcasted, and it is going to be validated, and finally once the validation is done, it is going to be added to the blockchain. So this is the general process of a blockchain transaction. What do you get? Transaction means anything that you are going to play with the documents or the blocks. So the documents sometimes gets new information, or you are going to delete some information, or you are going to update the information, or a new block is going to be added. So all this basically is going to be termed as a transaction. Of course, this term transaction has come from the banking terminology. Basically for the banking operations to be carried upon without the bank itself. So please remember, the blockchain philosophy is there is, you need not means the banks and other centralized governing body is not required in whenever you are doing some kind of exchange of data or exchange of information or exchange of money. That needs to be done between 2 entities or 2 or more entities. So you don't require any bank or a centralized governing body in between when you do some kind of exchange of money or exchange of data or exchange of information. So to avoid those intermediary or a third party like a bank or a centralized governing, that's the basic philosophy of the blockchain. And the same philosophy is going to be work for our IoT systems too. So you don't require any third party authentication or a third party secure mechanism to be incorporated. Can you, most of you people, you might already using the websites. Can you tell me some of those third party tools or third party security standards or security mechanisms which we do incorporate? Can you please name some of those security mechanisms that you incorporate, a third party security mechanisms that you incorporate for your activities to be used on the internet? Can anybody please tell? Have you understood the question? If not, if you are not clear with the question, I can explain again. Hello, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So please tell me, third party security certificates which we use it for our websites or for our activities on the internet?
So SSL.
Very good. Exactly. So secure socket layers, using, I'm asking about the third party names, some names at least. SSL is a mechanism, secure socket layer mechanism for your network, in the network, to make use to send the data. Okay. I'll put the question in another way. Hope you are following the session, all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes,
Fine.
sir.
Good.
Yes,
Good. So please, can you see the what is available on my screen now?
Moodle.
Web page.
Moodle, our course web page. So is our Moodle site is secured or not?
Yes.
Secure
Secured. How did you say that it is secured?
with that
Just
locks
lock
icon.
yes. Icon.
With the lock icon. Very good. So at least you should see what is that lock. Okay, have you clicked that lock? Anybody? Do you know which particular?
Yes, I clicked.
Very good. So what did you observe? Who is saying that?
So,
Yeah, Sugam, tell me, what did you find from that?
some keys and digital certificates and all those things.
Yeah. So what are those keys? Those you are not seen, I can see. I am just clicking here, so you can see, and please see the certificate. So what do you see from the certificate? Can you please see the certificate? Now I have opened it. I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this is a SSL certificate only. This is also this, but I am expecting an answer. What is the name of the third party? The third party means I have taken somebody's help to secure our website. Sorry?
Let's Encrypt, like it's an
Very good. So here you can see that you can see the third party which I have used here. You can get the details. You can see the where is that Let's Encrypt.
it would be an issuer details, sir. Like if you scroll
Yes.
down.
So click the statement. You will come to let'sencrypt.org. This is a third party. So this particular SSL certificate I have put for our Moodle site, so that our website is now secure. So that this Let's Encrypt is a third party basically. Third party means I am the person who is hosting the website, and you are the person who are going to use that website. So we two are first person and second person, and the third person is that we are taking the help of that third person, so that there is no intruder comes in between us when you're trying to browse the information, or when I am trying to upload the information, so that the hacker or intruder cannot change that information. So these are all happening with the third person's involvement. But when you look into the blockchain aspects, please remember the blockchain doesn't have like a third person. You are not taking the help of those certificates. You are not going to take the involvement of another person here. You and the receiver. If you are the sender, there will going to be another person, that is the receiver. So either you can be a sender or you can be a receiver at the different times when you do those data exchanges or data transactions. So there won't be any third person. There won't be any bank. There won't be any centralized government. So you do on your own. Means it is basically a distributed environment, and it is a peer-to-peer technology. So like that, this blockchain is something like that. You doesn't require another entity to govern you. Only you as a sender, and you as a receiver at different instances of time. So you and the other person only, you do the transactions, and there is no intruder, or there is no other third person who can involve in between your transactions. Okay, now if you look to the blockchain versions, there are something like different versions of the blockchain. So at present we are in the blockchain 3. So what is blockchain 1? So in the blockchain 1, this is the older version. Basically you are going to have certain kinds of transactions to be done. Just 1 second, please. Okay, so those transactions is going to be done, and blockchain 2 is basically you have a smarter ledgers, and blockchain 3 you have a distributed apps. So distributed apps, distributed applications, in fact. So we are in this particular era So most of the development is taking place here. So the blockchain is basically is on the blockchain. One is basically on the Bitcoins and other things. Okay, my Raspberry is disconnected. Just let me connect it in the later stage when we come to this practicals. Okay. Fine. So you have three versions. Basically, you start with one is basically a Bitcoins, and the blockchain 2 is on the smarter ledgers, and the blockchain 3 is on the distributed apps. So people are working on how do you distribute your applications across the chain of different entities or the different networks or the different computers where you try to exchange the informations. So blockchain 2, let us today in our demo, we'll try to see the blockchain 2 philosophy on using a smart ledger or a document to be prepared, and how do you exchange between two accounts and so on and so forth. Let us have some basic understanding on that one. But let me just tell you some more points here. Features of blockchain. Basically, this is what it is: a distributed environment. It is a decentralized system, and of course, better security and authenticity and increased capacity. So thereby increased capacity means more and more blocks can be created, more and more entities can be added, in the sense that more users can be added and more documents can be added, and thereby increases the capacity and as well as the security. So more the blockchains you're going to have. So again, there are three types of blockchains if you see in the market. One is called consortium blockchain. The thing is called public blockchain, and the third one, private blockchains. Consortium blockchains are basically industries or organizations and academic institutions which form a consortium, a group of those entities, and they create their own blockchain and they do exchange their data among themselves with those consortium blockchain process. Whereas a public blockchain, basically every person can join that blockchain, can use that blockchain for various transactions and can do those activities efficiently using the public blockchain. So can anybody give the examples of public blockchain? At least for the general knowledge.
Ethereum, Bitcoin.
Yes, Ethereum itself is one. Yes, I am talking about the main network, the network name of the blockchain. Ethereum, again, Bitcoin is all technology only of the blockchain. Of course, the public only these are. But I am talking about the network name, Ethereum network. What is the main Ethereum public network? No idea. Okay, so you have something called mainnet and you have testnet. So mainnet is basically, it will be winded off. Now it is almost it is in the exhaust stage. Then in the future you will be hearing called testnet. So this mainnet is a main network. It is a Ethereum blockchain network. If you are going to connect to this, then obviously you need a big computer. In fact, so you are going to, your computer as a node is going to connect as a block to that particular main net in that existing system. And of course, okay, we'll not go in depth of all those things. Let just have an idea at this moment. So private blockchains is only for those organizations where their individual departments or their internal office entities, they try to exchange the informations. So here, most of the time, we can, for IoT also, we can use anyone among these three. But usually for our practice and for learning purpose, people do have this public blockchain and private blockchain concepts only to establish that. But before we go further to the implementation, please, there are certain terminologies here, the main components of a blockchain. So you have something called node. So you need to run a node, or you need to run a node application on the computer or on the electronic device, where you are going to make use of that device to connect to your blockchain. So that node application, basically your Ethereum node application only. Ethereum itself is a node. So you have, similar to Ethereum, there are other nodes too. But understand this is a software application where using a Ethereum node, you try to establish a connection to an existing blockchain or to existing network. And once you have a node which is running, once you have installed, in simple terms, once you install your node Ethereum on the electronic gadget or electronic device, then you can prepare your own ledgers. You can prepare your own documents. In other terms, the data that needs to be shared. So basically, ledger is nothing but a data structure which is managed inside the node. So it will be on your node, in other terms, on the computer or on the electronic device which you have installed. And that contains the entire ecosystem or the information that needs to be maintained and to be exchanged among the various entities. So in addition to this shared ledger, we also have something called as consensus algorithm. So what is this consensus algorithm? So once you establish or once you request a block to be added to the existing blockchain, so what you find is basically there is going to be a common understanding. So that common understanding will make the other blocks to recognize and consider the newly added block to be having certain kind of data exchanges. So this is also something like a consensus algorithm. When you say consensus, it means what is a common understanding. So here, depending on the application, you write your own algorithm. That's why now a lot of people are required. So this is a security algorithm, and you need to build up your own algorithm when you want to exchange the information across the various blocks, so that the other persons cannot easily intrude it and cannot change it. So a lot of works are also going on. Of course, this as such, there is no unique algorithm, please remember. So there are so many algorithms. Depending on the applications, you are going to have that respective algorithm that is going to be modeled for your application to run. So again, at the bottom, you have the virtual machine. Basically, that virtual machine which will have the instructions as part of this node, which is you have installed here, that every entity or every user that is been connected to the blockchain should adhere to some of those. Adhere means should follow the rules and try to exchange the information across those blockchains. So, but these are the terms, please remember. The terms, something like called node, shared ledger, consensus algorithms. Of course, virtual machine is nothing but the electronic virtual machine, that the resources that you provide for your data exchanges. So I have given a little bit more information here on the notes. You can see and you can try to understand it and you read it. So now comes to how does a blockchain work? So basically, a transaction is being requested or it can be initiated, and the transaction contains the data that needs to be transferred. It can be a money transfer, it can be a document transfer, it can be some data transfer also in a secure manner. So those blocks represents the transaction that you create the block here, and the block is sent to every node in the network. It can be a phone, it can be your mobile phone, it can be a Raspberry Pi, it can be an electronic device, it can be a laptop, it can be a computer, or it can be a server, or it can be a network. So that particular block or the document or the ledger that you prepared is going to be shared, and that is going to be validated across that network with the existing blockchain. And once that particular validation is completed, then the block is added. So the transaction is been completed here. So that's what the complete, it is a cyclic process. Please remember, it is a continuous process where you try to exchange the information and try to share the information in a, that is basically a database. But in a database, if you say all the database is not concentrated or it is not available at one particular place. So this database is available across those particular network of devices. So coming to this next, basically the advantages is basically the secure, that is what the increased security that you obtain if you are going to implement the blockchain. It is a cost effective, even the less resource constrained devices are able to implement to a maximum extent, and it is a time saving. And of course, there are challenges are there. So most of the people doesn't know the technology so far. Even most of the students also, I know that they are not aware of this blockchain technology. It itself is a new technology. Of course, this has come in the last, actually the origin is happened a decade ago. But from the Japanese developer. But the thing is, it is in practice, people have their own perceptions, and they have their own, it's a kind of doubts people have it. So in the society is not that much penetrated, in the sense the people are not accepted very easily as the other technologies that is being accepted. But nevertheless, it has got a bright future. That's what the scientists and the researchers have been already predicting it. So you can see that the understanding the technology is most important. You have different terms that is going to be very much useful for you to understand when you are practicing these things too. So you can see what are those terms. You can just go through it. So please remember, a blockchain versus a shared database. If you see in the old technology wise, the database which is located on a database server or on a distributed environment servers, whereas in blockchain, the information is interconnected with the help of blocks itself. So you will have a super user who is going to control over your or manage and control your database, whereas here there is no super user here. Please remember, he is a crowdsource. Anybody who is already connected to this one can manage and can. Only thing is that the trustworthiness of that user is very much required. Otherwise, he can also manage and control the data across the blocks if the password or the security algorithm is known. Otherwise, it is going to be a very difficult task for him also to change the data. So here, if those people who want to play and understand more, so what I suggest to you is I have given a link here, Raspberry Pi and Ethereum. So you can go to this particular website, and there are certain things that you need to understand. You can go through this. So how do you connect to your Raspberry Pi? Of course, this basic exercises of connecting LEDs and other stuff, you might have done it. Then later you just, after you playing with this, you play with the Ethereum and try to understand how do you can control your IoT devices. Means you can authenticate and well as control your IoT devices. So you can try to understand how Ethereum can be run on this Raspberry Pi. So I'm just giving the link for you. Later you can explore this very much and you can practice it once you have some time. So now let us see how do we run Ethereum node on the Raspberry Pi. So here, let me, of course, I have given the steps. Those who want to install Ethereum node, that is, or Ethereum node itself on the Raspberry Pi, I have given the steps, and of course, I have taken the help from the net. But remember, these blogs and these are all old one. So I have a little bit changes are there. You will not work on the latest Ethereum packages. So you may have difficulty if you are going to install today on your Raspberry Pis. Today means not exactly on today. On these days, you can go through these steps. If you are following the steps which are given on the websites, it may not 100% success because the packages gets updated and their dependencies are going to be changed. So please go through these steps for if you want to install it on the Raspberry Pi 3 and 4. So now here, let me just connect the Raspberry Pi node, which already I have installed the Ethereum node on the Raspberry Pi 3 only. So using PuTTY, I will connect to the Raspberry Pi. Just 1 second, please. I'm just trying to connect this to the Raspberry Pi. Let me just restart my Raspberry Pi. There is some network issue. So in meantime, so let me just tell you here. So we'll go to the installation of Ethereum node. So Ethereum node is this particular application. Ethereum node is the top of this application. There you are going to have your blockchain. So this is the node application. The node application itself is the Ethereum node here. So here, that is what how do you install it? How do you install this node application? The name of the node application is Ethereum. That particular process is given here. How do we run a Ethereum node on a Raspberry Pi? And once you install it, then let us run your Ethereum node on the Raspberry Pi. And now it is getting connected. Let me just connect the Raspberry Pi. Hope is my screen visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So here, let me just put this screen a little bit aside so that you can see the steps. And all right, so here, right. So you have a Raspberry Pi with Ethereum installed. So the installation steps are given on the left side of the screen. You can download it. If you want to explore it, you can explore it further. And it will be a good practice if you explore it. So once I am not telling about all the instruction steps. Okay, now the important step is the synchronizing Ethereum to the mainnet. So what I am doing is I am now connecting to the mainnet. Mainnet means, please remember, this is the main network of the Ethereum. Yes, from your Raspberry Pi also you can connect. From your computer also you can connect it. So it is an existing thing. But remember, when you connect to this mainnet, what happens is you require more than 50 GB if you are going to connect to the entire public mainnet. So this is a public mainnet, so it will be very difficult from the Raspberry Pi. You don't have that much of space. Even if you have a good computer with you with 1 terabytes of storage space on your system also, you will not be able to do, and you will not be able to connect to the mainnet. So what usually people we do here is, for the academic purpose and for the learning purpose, we connect to a maximum peers. It means you can connect maximum of 12 blocks, or you can connect to 12 entities. So that's what the command here is. And that's what you are seeing. This command is basically called as, this is Go Ethereum. Go, GETH stands for Go Ethereum. Go Ethereum is Go language. You're using a Go language Ethereum, and you are synchronizing the synchronous mode in the light mode. It is not in the complete mode. It is a light mode. Complete mode means you're connecting to the entire blockchain of mainnet. That is going to be next to impossible unless until you have a big server and your big resource present with you. You cannot connect to the mainnet. Otherwise, you can just synchronize to the light mode with a maximum of 12 peers. So the same command I'm giving here. So you can see it on the Raspberry command on the Raspberry Pi. And of course, this is what we are seeing in the last class. So you are using your output, you are running this particular command in the background so that you can connect to the existing mainnet with at least 12 peers. So once you, once you are connected, so you can see that it is running in the background here. And once, if you want to see the log file or this output file, what are all the existing things, you can just open another session, duplicate session, and you can see here. Let me just show you. So these things are running in the background. Please remember, means your Ethereum is running in the background connected to the mainnet. So now I am connecting through another command prompt, and here I am going to issue some of those commands here. So the commands will be something like this. So here the first command, basically when you try to see these commands already there in your material, once you connect it to this, so you can see the log files and you can open that commands that needs to be practiced, just a practice here. How do you run your Ethereum nodes on the Raspberry Pi? So once your Ethereum is running in the background, the basic commands like, so we'll see one by one command here. Let me just put the screens properly for you. So of course the installation will take its own time, and you need to be patient in doing those installations for the first time if you are doing. So let us see here. If you want to see the log files, the Ethereum is connected, you can use your use the command. And what is the output file name? This background process when it's connected. Yes, please.
NoHub.out.
Yes, very good. No, I'm just opening that file, nohub.out file. So now you can see these are all the, if you want to see what are all the connections that are made, it is connected to the mainnet. So just to have a glance, which is the latest block and so on and so forth, you can just have an idea. Means the latest block means so many people will be there who are getting connected to each other. So you can keep a track of all those informations here. So assume that you already seen that one. Then we'll see. You need to write some programs. So if you want to interact with this Ethereum shell or to the node shell, then you can use this GETH get attached. So the attach command is you're attaching to the node with the help of a JavaScript console. So the JavaScript console is basically it help you to attach to the Ethereum node. So once you say, you can see here, this is a JavaScript console, that is the Go Ethereum JavaScript console. I hope the screen is visible to you, the commands.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you can just practice the basic commands here. So if you want to see what is the, I have typed something here to check the latest block that is synchronized with your, means of course that is what your block is. Maybe after you, somebody else on the internet also might have created a block. Who knows? We don't know. But if you want to see what is the block number So a block is nothing but a ledger here, which is keeping some information. Then you can issue the command eth dot get block number, and you can see the console.log file. So from that, I just entered. Now you can see there is a number here, the block number 127911027. Of course, this will not be a unique number. Every time you change it, every day you are going to get a new number here. So that is something like that. And if you want to list the commands or the accounts which are already existing into your this mainnet with the maximum peers which you have is 12. If you want to list all those accounts within that maximum peers, so you can use the eth.accounts. So here the existing accounts are going to be displayed. So you can see here all these account numbers which are in the hexadecimal values. So this is basically an account number. If can you see the green color text now? Last class we are having some difficulty. Is the text is visible?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So it is basically, yeah. So can you tell me how many accounts are there now at present in the last 12 peers you have it? One, you can see here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 accounts are there as well. Okay. So it will be, of course, sometimes it may varies. If there are no connections, there is no connection. So and again, the commands like who are the admin peers. So you can issue the command admin dot peers. So you can see now you are the admins here. If you see here, this is what the ID number. So he is one of the admin, and similarly there is another ID here who are the admins. So basically the initial blocks whose people are there, their remote addresses are here, and their port numbers are there here. You can see as well. Of course, the local address, if you see here, 192.168.1.8, this is my Raspberry Pi address. This is the local address. But when it is connected to the, of course, this doesn't require internet, but if you are connected to the internet, you will get the remote addresses also. If you want to, anybody wants to talk to you, and anybody wants to transact to you, you need to send through this particular IDs only, which are in the hexadecimal values. So those commands you can try to understand over here. Then as well, you can move forward. If you want to do some kind of remote procedures calls to a so-and-so block, you need to establish remote procedure commands for that. So you can say admin. As an admin, you can start your RPC remote procedure calls. Then go to, you can just establish your remote procedure call onto your site. Some other port number, okay, 8545. I'll give the same port number to you. Of course, is not there. So here you say it is true, then you have established that one. Then once it is done, you can just see whether it is running or not. So RPC will be starting on that particular port number 8545. I can see on the left side, you can send the transactions. If you know the ID and if you know the passphrase, then only you'll be able to transact. You can send and as well as receive the data. So of course, in this example, we are not mining. Please remember, you are not mining each and every block. Mining means in Ethereum, mining is nothing but some kind of searching or some kind of viewing the contents in each ledger or each document. But we are not doing that one. Only thing is we are seeing how the block is created. So this is one block, what you are seeing from one particular user. And once the block is connected, then again the chain process is going to be established. And once it is established, you can send and as well as receive the data. So thus commands to send and receive this, you can see it on the left side of the screen. What are the variables? And of course, you should know the passphrases. So passphrase is nothing but a password. How did you get the password? You can get the password like this. See, I assume that I can create a account. Let me just show you one account that getting connected here. So here, GETH, Go Ethereum. The command that we will go for accounts creation is, you can see command accounts new. You can see account new here, GETH account new. You can issue the same command. Once you issue the command, you are going to get a new account. So then at that time, is going to ask for a password. So please remember, a new account is getting created here. So total, you can have a maximum peer count. Of course, it is 50, but we restricted to 12 only. So here I can give something, a password here, but please remember, these passwords are going to be playing a vital role in the blockchain. You need to be careful, you should not forget this password. So if password doesn't match, then again you need to create the account. So here, let me just enter the same password. Right. Just it will take a couple of minutes to create the new account. Yes. So here your new key was generated. Please remember, this is the public address of the key. This is the key. This is a secret key. That is the hashed key for my document. And where it is located, you can see the path on my Pi where it is located. So this is the important key for the account which is just now generated. So here again, if you are going to see attach, you can see that blockchain here. Then you can see. So if you want to see the commands, the accounts. So you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 0xF1. F1 is the new account that we just created just now. So this is F1. You can see this is account. Previously there were 4 accounts only. Now we created the 5th account. So like this, you can create up to a maximum of 12 accounts, and you can attach one of those key to your IoT device, and you can send it to the another IoT device or to another IoT entity on your gateway. So usually we play this we will run it on the Raspberry Pi, and Raspberry Pi is like acting like a gateway. So when from one gateway to another gateway, at least maximum of 12 devices can be connected, and each device has a unique key, and that is going to be a secured data to be transferred between those Raspberry Pis. So this is how you can try to implement it, and please go through the one link which I have shared to you to understand how the DHT sensor data is going to be transferred or to be transacted, so that you'll get a good idea on the IoT's implementation of the blockchain. So that completes the 4th unit, Raspberry Pi and Ethereum. So please go through this link and you'll get the complete practical details, so that you can also practice and do that. So that completes basically the 4th unit. So here the 4th unit, we last class what is the framework project 7, and as well as how the security, privacy and trust IoT data, and what are the projects which are applied on the European Union for various security and privacy aspects to be maintained for an IoT. And of course, in the security, this particular topic, I discussed about the blockchain, introduction to blockchain. So this completes the 4th unit, and I'm starting the 5th unit now. So before I start the 5th unit, let me, some of you, I think some of you asked for something like the assignment 1. Okay, so I received the emails. Let me clarify you. Of course, all clarifications I cannot give it today. Your revised marks, those who have sent a mail, for them only I'm reevaluating those assignments, and your marks will be mostly updated by Monday. And you can see it by Sunday also. You can see it. Most likely I complete by Sunday. You can see it by Sunday afternoon. Your assignment 1 as well as the minor test 2 marks. So I plan to complete by Sunday afternoon. You can see the marks on the Moodle website. That is one thing. And the second thing is, of course, I think the students who are attending this, they know that there is a quiz exam. So when is the quiz exam scheduled, please? Can I know from you?
13th July.
Yeah, 13th is we are scheduled. The 13th is our Tuesday. Is it okay to write it in our normal scheduled time?
No, sir, we have another minor.
Yes, sir. Like
So it
data
means,
compression people are having.
means is it overlapping our schedule, because we have our regular time, no?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Because our regular time slot, we have our regular class. is the data compression is overlapping onto our regular time slot?
Yes, sir. Like sir is conducting exam till 1:30, sir. So yes, sir. 9 to 1:30.
Is this a 9 to 1:30 means a final exam?
Yes, sir. Like major part A.
Because that schedule will be coming, no? When the exams will be scheduled on which particular day. Okay, anyway, I am not concerned with that now. If suppose you are some people are having that data compression, then what is your what about others? When you will be able to write the test, please? Of course, there are 15 students. Let us 14 of them are there. Silence.
Sir,
How many of
the
you are
afternoon
how many of you are writing the data compression? Please let me know. You have any idea about your friends? Yes, Suvam, please tell me.
I guess
I'm also writing data compression. That's why.
Okay. Yeah, let me know the number. Anurag, please tell me how many of them are writing.
Uh,
I did not get your answer, Anurag.
sir, from IM Tech, I guess 3
Everybody
people
will
are
be there.
writing.
Huh?
No,
How
sir,
many?
not everybody. Only 3 people from IM Tech.
Okay. And
Me,
Suvam,
Anurag, and
I'm from IT.
IT, Suvam, and 4. Okay, because the other students are not there here and we cannot postpone it. What I suggest you is those who are unable to write the quiz, I give you an option of submitting an assignment. Is it okay?
so assignment based on
Based on this one only, the one which I am now giving you on the
it is.
screen, you please implement the Ethereum one BSC sensor.
sir, or like pushing the quiz to afternoon will be good, sir. Like we can also.
I will tell you, afternoon I have a class from 2 to 5 on the same day.
Uh, in the evening, sir, then like any time that day. Like,
Evening, I'll tell you what is the problem is. Evening, after 5 is over, then usually I start from the university around 5:15 or 5:30 and I reach home by 7 o'clock. And 7 to 7:30 is everybody accepts.
it's fine for us, sir. Like
Yeah, for others, that is the problem. I don't get any. 7 to 7:30 is becoming an evening time. I don't know how the other students will feel. It is a quiz exam, and in their own home, when they are writing that, and they feel that something indifferent. Why a test is being conducted in the evening times and all, so many issues may come in the future. That's the problem here for some students.
Sir, or can we postpone it to like Sunday or Saturday?
Next
any
week, next week itself is the last week for us. Next week itself is the last week, and we cannot go beyond the Friday.
Okay, so
You yourself told that Friday is the last. Somebody has told Friday will be the last. 20th also is not there. So that's what I will. Don't worry about. You can write the quiz questions anyway. Once the questions are out, I cannot conduct the same questions. So quiz exam will be there, and those who are unable to write quiz exam because of another exam, I'm giving an option of an assignment for them to submit. That assignment is basically on that Ethereum node. Okay, you just do practically you do it and submit the steps what you have done it, and you provide the screen prints. Okay. That will
Sir,
be better.
7 to 7:30 is fine, sir. Like if it's okay with the others.
Okay, this means, see, today we have only 14 of them here. Okay, we have another 20 students. Another 20 students, what is their say? We don't know, because already I told through email that test will be there on 13th.
sir, like actually in most of the courses, exams are going on till 9 o'clock in the night, sir. Like some soft computing, we had a test at 9 o'clock, and so it's fine, sir. 7 to 7:30. Like I'll ask in the group, and then we'll let you know, sir, by this weekend or.
Because no, we will not postpone it. That's what we cannot postpone the next week to some other day. We have to somehow complete by Tuesday only. That's what Tuesday evening. I'm okay for me. That is not a problem. Only my worry is if some of the students feel that tests are being conducted in the evening and nights, they'll feel in a different way. That's why to avoid that one only. So that's what anyway quiz will be there. In addition to the quiz, even see the problem is some people may not write the quiz also, and again they'll say we want another quiz. That is also one probability is there for me as a teacher. So I need to take the other alternate test for those people who are not able to attend the quiz. For them again I have to give the assignment. So I am thinking in that direction, please. So because anyway if some people cannot write the quiz, then they can write the assignment, submit it the assignment, something, because again we cannot prolong it further. I don't know, you should have told sir that we have another classes at that time, because our regular schedule is there, our regular class only. I usually plan for like that. Anyway, now we cannot unnecessarily disturb all your schedules. Let us see the timings. That's what people, okay, that is one thing. Another thing is, I don't know why, some people are telling that serial monitor is not there on the Arduino board.
So serial plotter, sir. Monitor is there, sir.
Serial monitor only we are, monitor only we were asking the assignment, no? We did not ask for the serial plotter.
Sir, it was plotter, sir.
Fourth question is asking for serial plotter, sir.
We
okay.
monitor we did it before only, sir. Plotter they were asking and plotter wasn't there, sir.
Oh, let me just open the question once, please. 1 second. See here, clearly reads an analog input on pin 0, convert it to voltage and prints the result to the serial monitor. The question says that prints the result to the serial monitor. Graphical representation is available. Okay, so that is serial plotter with graphical representation. That also you can plot it, but once you put the values on the serial monitor, you have to plot it. What is the problem? I don't understand.
Sir, serial monitor, we printed the values, sir. That next line was a bit confusing. Like we didn't
It's
know
not
where.
confusing me actually. Let me. I think Suvam, you have done this exercise, right?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to plot that? Plot in the sense you can you show that instead of 0 and 1, can you show intermediate stages there?
No, what was there that in that emulator on the pin, if we click it in a pop-up window, it's come up with a monitor that plots a digital wavefront.
Yes, I know. Even I have done that one. Let me just open that 1 second. Yeah, this is your Arduino. Is it visible on my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right. So here we have the serial monitor here on the Windows itself. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
This,
sir.
yeah, transmission and the receiving. So whatever the characters you send it, you will get it here. The transmission TX and RX values that you are going to be sent. If you write the program is going to send it, and you are going to receive it with different baud rate. You can set the baud rates here, 9000, whatever it may be. That is basically your serial monitor. So now here, when the data is getting transmitted or exchanging, the data is taking place, you can as well plot those things here. That screen is which one? This is the pulsar. Where is that digital screen will be there? Where is the digital one, Baba?
Sir, clicking on the pin twice will give the digital waveform. Like,
No, that is which pin? That is the thing you have to. We have not done the complete programming here.
pin 1, I guess, sir, because like the serial monitor, like, but it will only show the voltage going to the serial monitor, sir, not the.
So no, okay. Just let me check. So this is a assignment submitted by Suvam. You can see the list of sensors, all the list of sensors that are available with from the, he has written the program to list those sensors. So that is the important aspect here. I asked you to write the program to get those sensors using the sensor manager. He has listed out. So that's what he has written. See, all the sensor values have been listed here, which are available on the device. Similarly, he has written the program for the light and for that ambient proximity sensor and the ambient. And of course, this freezing and all is fine. This is at the water level simulation, that is also fine. Now you see here carefully, so he has put the serial monitor of this particular devices to be sending and receiving the values. And yeah, here he has put the, see here, there is a change here. It's not only just 0 and 1. There are different levels of changes of the signal.
Sir, I guess that's 0.5 waveform, sir. Like values less than 0.5 will be showing till 0.5 and above 0.5.
Oh, okay. Then see, this is a simulator. You will not get the accurate values, no? How will you get until unless we see it on the oscilloscope? You will get it. We are not seeing it on the oscilloscope. So what is the problem here? I still am not getting your dot. See, these values are to be plotted. That's all.
Sir, but like the values are between like 0 to 1023 or something, sir. Like,
oh yes, 0 to 1023. That is the maximum value only. 1023. If you see the step, if you see the step here, what is the step indicates?
Higher voltage to serial monitor, I guess, sir.
No, you are not. You are not. My point here is the step indicates there is a variable values. It's not only 0 to 1023. In between values are also there here. In between values. You can see it in other diagram also. See here carefully. It's not just only 0 and it's not just only 1023. Whatever there in between values are there, in between 0 to 1023, that values are there here, but not exact values. It has been threshold values will be there. You can just plot it here for that particular same program only. And for that, he has written this program here. You can see the code. He's using the serial monitor, serial print, and the voltage. Of course, he's put some delay, so there is the delay is going to be there, and the values are going to be transferred, and those values are going. He has put a screen print of those. That's enough, at least, to be aware of how to see the values here. Basic philosophy is you don't have a real device, real Arduino board and an oscilloscope to see the variable values. Yeah.
Just one doubt, sir. Like, but this is not the values on the serial monitor, no, sir. Like, it's the voltage going to the serial monitor. Like,
Voltage
because
going
we double click the pin, so like it should be that, no, sir. Like,
no, what is that? What is your doubt then? See, what is that here? You have to read a value for a particular pin 0, convert it into voltage. So that voltage value only is going to the serial monitor. Voltage value only have to go to the serial monitor.
yes, sir.
That is the question only. Are you getting Pranav? Are you clear now?
Yes, sir. But like
See,
exactly, like
question,
if you look at the actual serial monitor, it's
no,
showing
no,
different
you see,
values.
again, you see, I told this, use Arduino simulator here. Use the Arduino simulator. Whatever you best you can do it on the simulator. You try to convert the voltage only, and that voltage value converted value, you see that prints on the serial monitor. That's what the question asks, and that's what he has done it.
Okay, sir.
Sir, like senior monitor thing, we also have done that, sir.
Then what is the problem now then?
So the
What
only
happened now?
reason we didn't put it was like we thought that's not showing any values between 1 to 5 or like.
That's what the values between 0 to 1023, some in between values. It can be 10, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. Exact values, exact analog values cannot be seen because this is a simulator and is working on a digital device. That is a simulator. So at least in between, see this guy, if you see this guy, what this guy has done, I have shown you what this guy has shown to you. At least in between, there is a steps in between higher to lower and lower to higher. At least that resemblance, it is not just simply high to low, low to high. In between also values are something you will be able to display. That is the knowledge that we need to understand where how it is being done. That is an assignment, you need to explore it. Okay, anyway, that's what I am telling you. This, you see, this guy, I'm not telling praising, I'm not criticizing others, don't misunderstand me. So here at least he has put all his efforts. If you see the way he has written the program to find the sensors on the mobile devices and all, program with the screenshots and everything is there. And that guy itself has got 18.5. You see, he's not 20 also. Of course, I did not evaluate it. If I have evaluated, definitely I should have given that the remaining marks also. But see that that involvement is not seen. This kind of the presentation of these outputs is not seen on the others. That's what those TAs were telling. Actually, when I asked them, that kind of that is the difference they would like to see. This is a fifth question also. So people were not very much reluctant to just to put in a better way. So there must be some difference between a student who has done sincerely and put real efforts and given the proper values and the things to the question asked. So that difference is only we have identified those differences. That's what they were telling basically. So anyway, those who have put the queries, I will go to the email by today. Whoever puts it, for them only I'm going to evaluate. Tomorrow onwards, I'm not going to consider those requests because already 4 days time is given to you. Whatever the queries you have with respect to assignment, please put your queries at least by today end. And I'm going to reevaluate those and I will put the marks accordingly, whatever the reevaluation is there. And that marks you can know it by Sunday or at the maximum Monday morning. And similarly, those are assignment 1. And minor test 2 marks, I will try to complete by Sunday. And I will ask the assignment 2 to be evaluated by the TAs only. So, but I will give the instructions again in a different way. See, let us see if you have any difficulty or if you have any unfairness on the assignment 2 that is evaluated by them, you can let me know by Tuesday so that everything will be sorted out and the final marks will be ready by Wednesday or Thursday. And once the Friday is over, I cannot change any marks, please. And I am going to give it to the office. So just let me make it clear for all of you at this point. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And today will be the, of course, Tuesday class. I will take a Tuesday and if required on Friday, but today will be the last class. And one more thing, the Raspberry Pis which I connected through online, are anybody still using them? I hope you have completed your assignment too. because from tomorrow onwards, I'm disconnecting them and I need to take the Raspberry Pis to the office. And Anurag, can you please, if possible, you have completed, if your exercises, please return that Raspberry Pi. So,
Okay, sir.
for the, please, whenever it is possible, not exactly next week, any time after next week also, maybe in another 2-3 weeks, what we are using for another experiment.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
So this Raspberry Pis, you will not be able to connect from tomorrow onwards, please, because I'm disconnecting from tomorrow and I need to take those Raspberry Pis for other experiments. Yeah. Yeah. Any other queries, please? Okay. So if you have any queries, please do get solved by next week. And after that, nothing will be regarding the evaluations and other queries. I will not be able to help you later because those marks will be freezed and we cannot change anything in the later stage. Anything on the evaluation parts, please let me know by Tuesday or Wednesday at the max, please. So of course, you will be busy with so many other courses, but please do inform to your friends also. And once it is freezed, I cannot be able to change or update anything. So we are moving to the 5th unit now. So 5th unit basically is a kind of, if you see the syllabus, what is been given is the case studies and mini projects based on industrial automations, transportation, agriculture, healthcare, and home automations. So this is basically a kind of theoretical content only. So you need to understand how the IoT systems were deployed for various applications, either in the transportation or in the agricultural field or in the healthcare or in the home automations. So for home automation, I have done an extensive work how IoT can be made use of. So all my research papers, if you look here carefully, including the fog computings and all, basically are focusing on the home automations only. So if you want to have more ideas on this, the research and a little bit on the technical aspects, so you can go through my papers and you can just search my name on the Google and you can get the latest papers. And whatever the smart home papers are there are basically on the home automations only. So let us view some of those other mini projects or those. Of course, everybody might have known the importance of IoT and people are using IoT for various purposes and so on and so forth. So I have a little bit for your notes purpose and for your reference purpose, I have just prepared some notes. Of course, this collected from the internet only. But anyway, for you to have certain some of those important things, in a very nutshell, I just prepared the notes for you. So here, let us see the home automation. So if you look to the home itself, see there are so many sensors, indoor air quality sensors, your smoke detectors, your elevators in the building, in the smart building, the lighting, and the cameras which have been kept in the building for monitoring people as well as other entities of the building. You have pumps, so many, everything. If you look here, anything means any device. So obviously everything is getting connected with each other and they can be easily connected. And of course, for this to get connected, you require certain sensors and certain actuators. So here, most of the devices for smart home, please remember here, smart home, you will be using, of course, these LEDs, you can use it for your smart home also most of the time. And you can use your lock and unlock the doors, basically using again those locking and unlocking. Again, you require some kind of actuators, you require servo motors so that you can program it. So you know how to program an Arduino with a LED, you know, with a Raspberry Pi LED, you know it. Similarly, with servo motors programs, at least you can write it with servo Arduino, you can interface it. Similarly, of course, you might have not done something on the IR sensors. Basically, you can use the infrared sensors. So in your own home, you can use those infrared sensors for opening, closing, automations. All these are for the automations. And of course, from the software point of view, you can have these all these sensors and actuators can be connected through your emails. And of course, the vision sensors are nothing but the cameras. Whatever you are seeing, the cameras, they're basically in IoT technology, in our physical devices, instrumentation, we call it as vision sensors. It is a sensor. Camera itself is a sensor, please remember. Basically, it is a vision sensor. Again, there are different types of vision sensors. So you can use your face images, and of course, you can use the smoke detectors in your home, and as well as you can have surveillance, and you can interact, you can interconnect your cars with all those electronic gadgets with all those things. But of course, the basic philosophy, how do you connect it and how do you use them, is always the IoT architecture. Please remember, the architecture remains the same. So can you broadly tell me what architecture we need to follow for if you are going to do a smart home automation, please? You might have already learned different architecture models of IoT architecture models. Can you just correlate which type of IoT architecture model is most suitable for this home automation projects? Because remember, each architecture is meant for doing or is meant for applying in different context. So it is not that every architecture is a generic architecture which can be applied for agriculture, which can be applied for industrial automation or your healthcare or your home automations. It doesn't make sense. So each architecture is meant for certain applications only, depending on what context you are using. Similarly, all sensors cannot be used for different all purposes. Different purposes, different sensors are required. So, and some people very smartly, intelligently, just with the knowledge of having certain things on IoT, they think that some sensors will be used for everything. So it is not like that place. So it will differ. So just may I ask you, you might have already learned different IoT architecture models. So let me know what are the different IoT architecture models, which is most suitable for smart home automations.
Cisco's model, sir, like because it's communication intensive, no, sir. Like,
communication, yes. When there is when your IoT application requires more communication aspects. Communication means you are going to exchange the data with different communication protocols, and there are different entities. So please remember, any IoT application basically looks for heterogeneous interoperability. These are the very buzzwords, please remember. So all these things will play a vital role. So if your application is data collection is more important, or data processing is important, or data communication is important. So three important things, please remember. Fundamentally, there are three. One is data collection. If you are a computer science and IT guy, you can understand in this way. That's why I'm using these terms. One is the data collection, the other is data processing, and other is data communication in terms of data. So your data collection, it means how you are collecting data from various smart sensors, from various devices which are connected with sensors and actuators, collection as well as controlling. So if you are focusing on that, then which architecture model is most appropriate? If you are focusing only on data collection, and you tell me which applications do prefer that or require the data collection architecture model is the most important thing. One example for home automation is basically communication. Here, because if you look at a smart building, in each building you have different floors, and each floor you have different rooms. And if you're using wireless protocols, so obviously the data is not on a line of sight, and data has to be exchanged between various entities and the routers. So the communication is most important aspect. So the Cisco has given its architecture model so that the data can be efficiently communicated. So data reliability is going to be there, and you will not lose the data when they have been communicating with each other. So Cisco model is most preferable because the routers are there, gateways are there, they are more robust and more flexible. Flexible means they can connect more number of devices, and they can communicate with each other more efficiently in terms of network parameters or QoS parameters. So Cisco can be preferable, Cisco architecture model can be preferable for home automations. Now, this is home automation means it is basically a data communication, where data communications is more in number or more most of the time for that IoT application. Communication of data itself is the important or the vital part. But for some IoT applications, okay, that points are already here. You can store, analyze, and communicate, exchange information. Whatever I discussed here, that points are listed out here. You can see those communication networks. And how do you communicate also? You can also have the publish subscriber model. And you can see this publish subscriber model, JSON format data can be communicated with devices using your Raspberry Pis. And of course, using your mobile phones and other electronic gadgets, you can easily interact or communicate or manage and control your home devices, either from your office or from some other remote place also. So that particular publish subscriber model is another one important model that needs to be followed in the home automations, where data communication is most important, vital part. So let us look into the smart cities. So the smart cities, this particular case study, if you look to the smart cities, tell me which type of architecture model is most preferable place in this particular type of smart cities. It is not just one building, a smart building or just a smart home. It is a smart city. Here, can you please tell me what architecture model is most appropriate if you have understood some of the architecture models. So in a smart city, please remember, you have healthcare devices, you have different buildings, you have transportations, you have vegetations, you have satellite communications also, you have schools, you have so many other business activities. So all these are going to be healthcare, transportations, agriculture, vegetations, communications, all these things will comes into the smart cities. Now, as such, one particular architecture model is not being considered here. Please remember. So, in a smart city, since various aspects comes here, you can see the protocols: ZigBee, Wi-Fi, 6LoWPAN, IEEE, Sigfox. All these service providers, different telephone service providers, network types. You can have wide area networks. You have metropolitan area networks, because it is a city itself. You have different things. So what again, you have services like transportations, healthcare, smart parking, waste management, smart energy metering. All these things comes into the smart city concepts. So now, of course, what you require, you need low cost systems, low power consumption systems. Transportation traffic modeling is required, interoperability, connectivity of various sensors, various devices, security and privacy, above all these things. So as such, one architecture model is not preferable. It is going to be a combination of several other architecture models. So please go through this an idea. If you have any queries, you can get back to me on the next week too. So now move on to the smart environment. So in the smart environment, what you see is in the smart environment, you have smart city itself is a single entity. And you have smart buildings, smart transportation, smart health, smart industry, and smart grids, basically electricity grids and all. So here also it is a culmination of various architecture models, various standards, various objectives, and various characteristics of different types and all. So each environment is going to have different purpose, and those smart environment technology you can see listed with different objectives and which protocols has to be used. So can you tell me IEEE 802.15.4 resembles to which type of communication protocol? IEEE 802.15.4. IEEE standard numbers. It is a ZigBee protocol. IEEE 802.15.4 is a ZigBee protocol. IEEE 802.11. IEEE 802.11. Can you tell me which is the standard?
Wi-Fi.
Yes, every day we use it in our own home. So that is basically your Wi-Fi standard. What about IEEE 802.15.1? Yes, please. At least you can type it, no? At least you can type and tell me the answer. 15.1, 15.2. No idea.
Bluetooth.
Every day we use it in our own homes. Okay, see, IEEE 802.15, 802.15.1, 15.4. 15.4, your Zigbee, your mesh networking. 15 series, it's all 802. Please remember, I'll give you one clue, one hint you can remember forever. 802.15 is only for short range communications. Please remember. 802.15 IEEE. All are short communications. Short communication means very short distance data exchanging. 802.11 is for long distance communications. So your LoRaWANs, all your Wi-Fi's, your LTE, long-term emulations, and what you call this 5G. Now you are coming to 6G. So these all will be on the 802.11, 10, 12 like this. But the higher the number is for shorter communications. At least you can remember in this way. So you go through this. Please remember, as a network engineer, you should remember the standard numbers. Is always important. Okay, then we have, so that's what I told you here. These are the local wireless standards. You have 802.11, 15.1, 15.4. So these are all standards which are being used. Standards means they are standards. Everybody has to follow that standard if you are going to use those communications. That's what the IEEE has given. So that's complete some of this, and in the Tuesday's class I will give you some more information on the use case studies with respect to their data processings and the gateways. So that will be end of your syllabus. So most likely on Tuesday we are going to wind up the syllabus. So if at all you have any other queries or you require any other materials, everything, please check it before Tuesday, and let me know if you require anything else. That's it. So any queries for today's class, please, or for the previous classes? So a little bit of short information to be passed on to you with respect to the data processing and the gateways of the Unit 5. That I will discuss it on Tuesday. For it will be half an hour, something like that. Then that completes the syllabus. All the material is there on the course page itself. You can download week-wise. We started it. Everything is there. Nothing is hidden here. So I tried my best to make you to do some kind of practice, even in this online pandemic period. So I hope you at least have some insights on this network terminologies, network technologies, and this IoT stuff. But remember, unless until you don't practice the lower level to higher level, the rest, everything is going to be clumsy. So IoT is not different from anything else. It is a combination of computer networks, operating systems, your web technologies, internet technologies, and your databases. That's it. This is a subject which is not different from others. Only thing is, since it involves so many things, people get afraid of so many things, because it literally electronics is also there in this. So other than that, this subject, because electronics you might have studied in your intermediate and your degree, what electronic fundamentals and all that fundamentals, the knowledge is sufficient actually. There is no new things, only thing. Once you do some practice, then automatically will come into picture. Okay, so if you are not having any queries, then I'll wind up the session for today. And regarding this quiz exam, please let me know whether it is acceptable for all others or to have from 7 to 7:30. or otherwise, along if those who are unable to write the quiz, then they can submit the assignment by next week. Today is Friday, so you know whether you will be able to write it or not. So 1 week time is there. If you don't want to do that exercise, then if you don't have time, maybe the problem is now the time is the most important thing for everybody. So if you don't have time, then let me know. Is it okay? First option is, please ask your friends if it is acceptable for them to write from 7 to 7:30 on Tuesday evening, and see the responses, something like that. Because as a teacher, I cannot, because already I mentioned it will be on 13th. So because only maybe I think data compression may be something like, as you mentioned, 3 + 1, 4 or 5, or at the maximum 6 to 7 students may be there. So for the 6 to 7, I cannot ask all the 25 students to 25 to 26 students. We have 35, 36 students are there in this class. So we cannot make all of them to write at that point. Is maybe how far it is fair is very difficult. So I just give an option for you, for those 6, 7 people. If you can do one exercise, that's submit that as an assignment. That will be fine. Am I clear to you, please?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, then. We'll see you on Tuesday then. Please update me regarding the quiz. Who will be able to update me about the 7 to 7:30?
Sir, I'll ask him.
Oh, okay. Pranav, you take the initiative. Then you please let me know. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Fine. Thank you. So, anything else, please? If not, then I will just wind up the session. Okay, then we'll meet on Tuesday. Thank you. Fine. Take care. Yeah.
Thank you.